day in the life of the art department, bro. I was thrilled when I read the outline and realised there were so many new locations and so many big builds this year. As a member of the art department, you just want to build everything. I mean, that's what we do and that's what we love.
One of the things that separates Game of Thrones from most other shows is the way it looks. And the way it looks is almost entirely the primary responsibility of Deb and her insanely talented art department.
I'm the first in, apart from the producers themselves.
Debs and myself, we lead a team of art directors, concept artists, assistant art directors, graphic artists. That is the fuel that feeds the construction shop.
The two other art directors that we have, they're always first on the ground.
Whatever they throw at us, you have to come up with a creative answer.
You create worlds, you create something that is different from reality.
It's best also to start the concept artists at this point as well.
The construction department will break down into carpentry, plasterers, painters, sculptors, metalwork, rigging department.
And then over the following weeks, everyone else filters back through.
12 beds. Ready for the infirmary.
Beautiful.
Props will break down into furniture, drapes department, and a painting department.
Beautiful. And this is as it was in previous seasons, isn't it? We also have the greens department who'll make sure that all of the ground surfaces have been taken care of.
It's a lot of cajoling of a lot of people to make sure that they can kind of do what we want them to do.
This year we're absolutely filled to the gills with people on computers, people on drawing boards, people drafting graphics. It's all happening in a very small space. You just can never let the machine stop. Don't stop the machine for anything. Dragonstone is certainly the piece that I'm most proud of. It's probably the most original work that we've managed to achieve on the show so far.
Dany coming home was a really interesting sequence. What was really lovely about doing it was that doing it for Game of Thrones and doing a sequence like that, you can really do it properly. Like, you can really take your time with it. You can really give it its due as a real moment.
It's about 5 minutes of screen time where no one's talking. It's not like an action sequence where you've got the excitement of people fighting. It's just people walking.
The place itself is really the other main character. It puts a lot of weight on the art department.
We had so many elements that we had to somehow knit together to create the whole Dragonstone world.
Dragonstone this year was a combination of some of the most beautiful locations in Spain you've ever seen.
The arrival is shot in Zumaya. You then get up onto the platform, go up a set of stairs, turn around, and then we're on stage here in Belfast, and those are the massive dragon gates. And then once she goes through those doors here, then you pick her up again in San Juan, where she goes up the steps to the castle. It's like a whole tapestry of locations that we had to knit together to work for Dragonstone. Looking for the space where Dany would land when she would first arrive home, we had to find somewhere that was very special for her. And when we arrived at Zumaya Beach, the geological formations there are so unique and so special and so interesting that they have a weight to them that none of us could ignore.
That leads to these dragon gates that Deb designed that are massive and spectacular.
Our main job for Dragonstone this year has been the exterior of the entrance gate, which is flanked by two big dragon head gate guardians that we've carved.
They started sculpting way early, just because something like that is a very time-consuming article to get ready.
The Dragonstone gates, which they built for about 10 seconds of footage, which was huge, like twice the size of double-decker buses on end.
That leads to this raised stairwell that goes over the water and leads all the way up to this monastery where we put Dragonstone. That is such an unusual and incredibly beautiful place.
Here we are, we're on Stage B, Titanic Studios, and this is going to become the Dragonstone. Previously it was marine, all the big marine sets were here, now we're Dragonstone. I think we're 2/3, 3/4 of the way through construction, but we're doing pretty well. It's ambitious, so it was always going to be tight.
Zumaya Beach ended up influencing the design of the interior sets.
We sent a couple of plasterers out to Spain, and we call it a squeeze. What it is, they take an imprint of rock wall, and they'll make a huge rubber impression of that texture. They can bring that back here, and then we can make our own plaster versions. So basically, we're bringing a bit of Spain back with us.
We're at the back of the set, and this is one of the corridors that is running down one side of the main set. We're just building up in various stages here, so we're fixing the set to the location. And these corridors are going to be the areas where Daenerys and Tyrion and everyone are going to be walking up and down to get from A to B once they're in the Dragonstone castle. So here we go, we're going down the tunnel, and we're approaching the entrance to the main hall. And we're going to have a beautiful pair of elaborate gates here, push them open, and then bang straight into the main audience chamber of Dragonstone. Which is something that is completely different to anything we've seen on Game of Thrones before.
David and Dan were very clear with what they wanted the audience chamber to look like.
A lot of research was done into how the audience chamber would work for the script, how it would look in reality.
I wanted this set to sort of start in the cave and grow out of it. And then we were able to bring in those beautiful geological formations in those side corridors.
That seems so appropriate for Dragonstone, since the castle itself is meant to look a bit like a dragon, you know, and have those sharp edges and scales.
What was really key about the audience chamber, you wanted to come in and you wanted to be impressed, and I also think you wanted to be a little bit terrified. There's something about the entire architecture which is unsettling. It doesn't really seem to be able to support itself, so you're always a little bit anxious and nervous.
They wanted a huge floor space, and there was going to be a few top shots, so the floor had to be interesting, of course. So we tried different shapes to the floor, and we just found the hexagon shape worked really well.
I think there was almost 850 floor tiles to make and create and texture and paint.
We did a seal in the floor as you enter the chamber with a three-headed dragon.
That's probably my single favorite set we've ever built. Without a single visual effect in play, it looked so epic and grandiose and gothic and broody and slightly off-putting in the best way.
This is a former, a basic throne shape. And this afternoon or in the next hour or so, this will go right up here. That will sit right here, dead centre. So Daenerys will be framed with this window. And then behind her, massive great rock formation that goes all the way up into that corner.
It's going to be dramatic.
Yeah, it's really dramatic. Yeah, the angles are fantastic.
The way it was designed, the way the light flows into that room, the throne built out of the rock. It has such a visual impact, that room. I think it's a really special set.
By carving the throne into that rockwork itself, I think makes a very strong statement. It's not a piece of movable furniture. It's something that's tied to the building. It's something that the building was actually built around. And that was something that was really exciting to me.
I'm just so thankful that I have a throne with armrests. Oh, and a back. It's very exciting.
It felt like we were doing something special right from the beginning. So when you watch the crew walk in and when you see their faces, it's enormously satisfying to realise that we got there and it worked.
For decades, House Lannister has been the true power in Westeros, and the seat of that power is Casterly Rock. Grey Worm and the Unsullied will sail for the Rock and take it.
So here we are in the Dragonstone map room. It's slightly changed from the original. A few new improvements. We've made it higher. We've put this header through there so you can shoot up. And we've got a tunnel out the back now so that we've got a direct access out to the castle. There's going to be a lot of dialogue in here this season, so I want it to be lived in. So we've got a fireplace to get a bit of ambient light at night time. But I think the big change is that we designed a new dragon as a sort of logo for the new audience hall. But they liked it so much, they wanted to do the new design on the wall here. So we've taken the old dragon out, and we're now sculpting a new design of a dragon in.
Dany has her map table, and that's been established from going way back to season 2. That's Stannis' map table that was originally built by Aegon Targaryen.
This season, the map markers were made slightly larger than normal. We had this quite cool idea of thinking about World War II maps and how there was the Air Force and how that you'd often have like planes. And so the idea was that the dragons would be higher and have 3 dragons on the table that would be like your Air Force, your Game of Thrones Air Force. And then you'd have your foot soldiers, which would be the Unsullied, and they were designed a bit like pawns, so it kind of became like a cross between a chess set and a war table.
Each map marker was individually thought of and what would visually for the audience be represented. So it was like a clear indication of who was what was where.
We initially would start with a sculpt out of clay, and then it'd be a moulding process and then a clean-up process to refine all of the details. They would then go through to our props painting department, and then they'd be delivered safely onto set and locked in a cage until they were allowed onto the map table.
Gav, who makes all the props, he improved them really. He had to carve them in 3D and I'd done them in 2D. So it's great, it's like a partnership working together. My favourite thing might have been that dragon map marker. I'm really attached to it.
Enemies to the north. Ned Stark's bastard has been named king in the north, and that murdering whore Sansa stands beside him. Enemies everywhere. We're surrounded by traitors. You're in command of the Lannister army now. How do we proceed?
We're talking about places that don't exist, and so we've been trying to educate the audience from the very beginning, because it's so important to know where is King's Landing in relation to Winterfell and so forth. And so much of this season is strategizing between 2 opposing queens, in Daenerys and Cersei. And we knew that Dany was going to have her map table, and we wanted Cersei to have her equivalent.
We thought that a painted map on the ground next to her council chamber, that seemed like a good idea.
Jim Staines and Rhiannon Fraser, they created a beautiful map for the King's Landing map room. That was a wonderful piece.
The art department, they create this world, and it's extraordinary to play in it.
The first thing I heard about it was, before I even started this year, was there's a map on the floor, and I knew where it was going to be, so I thought, well, okay, big. And then doing a lot of drawing and painting and feeding those into the computer. We had a large print made first, and then we had 2 guys come in, Dave Packard and Greg Winters, who came in to actually paint the image that I had designed onto the floor.
We knew that Jim Staines, the graphic designer, would create something amazing, and he worked so hard on it, and through many, many different iterations of it. We decided it was only right that the person finishing up the map at the end of the sequence would be Jim Staines. So the man who is firmly but politely dismissed at the beginning of the scene by Jaime Lannister is indeed Jim Staines, who designed and created the map to begin with.
Have you ever been down here, Your Grace?
No, I can't say I have.
We had this incredible location, the old shipyards in Seville. We created a dragon skull room in the basement of King's Landing.
We have to create a feeling that dragon skulls have been stored there, semi-abandoned. It isn't a ritualistic space.
The process of creating the dragon skulls was initially receiving a concept which revealed several dragon skulls of different shapes and sizes, all in kind of relic form.
It was, wanting them to look as much like real skulls as possible. So there's a lot of research that they did into lizard skulls and dinosaur skulls, trying to get all the bone structure just right.
We'll use any artwork that the art department have generated, and we'll use a whole bunch of real-world references as well. For textures, we have a sheep skull to look at how the surface texture looks. We try to basically bring everything back into a reality using reference from the real world. The large dragon skull, that had a digital 3D sculpture done at the art department, and then we took on the task of translating that into a pretty large polystyrene carving.
The sculptors, without a doubt, the best thing that they did this year was that giant dragon's head. To watch that take shape, to see them draw it first, a massive drawing, and then to watch a team of sculptors create that giant thing was really thrilling.
It's about 30 foot long and 11 foot high and about 16 foot wide.
Elarion the Dread, the beast that Aegon rode across the sea. His flames forged the Iron Throne and brought the Seven Kingdoms to heel.
There's a lot of work that goes into it. All in all, there's going to be at least 2 months' work. More if you consider how much a drawing, an idea, and the conceptual, detailed sculpting would have been.
One of the main issues we had was each skull had at least 20, maybe even 30 horns and up to about 70 individual teeth. The workload was quite intense, really.
We'll cut it up and send it on lorries to Spain and reassemble it on the location.
The sculptors who've made them here in Belfast would travel out to Seville and get to fix them back together again.
The finishing work, the attaching the horns, which were sent separately, they were all attached within that skull room.
There must have been 50 dragon skulls down there of all different sizes and different states of disrepair.
The scale was from sort of handheld size skulls up to, with the horns on, up to about 10 feet in length.
While they were making the skulls, we ordered crates up from construction, then we crated them up. But the crates were quite useful as well, because we needed more dressing for the skull room than we thought. So the crates, which were intended just for shipping, ended up broken down, repainted, stenciled and dressed in. So that was quite handy.
I think many people, when they watch it, will think it's a visual effect, but it wasn't. Like, we literally had that big a place with that many skulls.
I think it's one of the most successful spaces that we've ever worked in.
One of the biggest sequences in this show to grapple with was the sequence in the Dragon Pit.
With the Dragon Pit, basically, it started with the location that they had found, the Italica Colosseum.
Italica was a city built, I believe, as of the beginning of the 2nd century. And this amphitheater, I believe, held up to 40,000 people for games. Right now, what we see, the ruins of it, I think they're more or less 25% of what it used to be.
It's not often you would ever get permission to shoot somewhere where the Romans built that still has Roman concrete. It's unbelievable.
The fact that they've managed to find it, get access to it, and then dress it in a way that serves the story, it's remarkable.
When you read the scene, you try and imagine a place for it, and then you see the photos of the location, you think, gosh, this place exists. It really felt like dragons had been there. We had a lot to work with. We were really adding in small sections of construction to tell our story that it was an abandoned space and that it had served a different purpose in the past. We built a platform and a podium for this very powerful scene that was going to take place there.
We were very much involved in the canopies and then the choice of fabric that we used. Because it was King's Landing, we wanted to use the deep burgundy red of the Lannisters. So we created 3 different platforms, and then the hero platform had a fabulous damask pattern and had more detailing on the columns. The chairs that Cersei actually sat on were like lovely leather embossed chairs with arms that had a bit more stature.
We had to fill in the pit where the animals were kept and the gladiators would wait before the fights in Roman times. The existing Roman architecture, we weren't allowed to touch it at all with our set. So logistically, building a structure on top of that, it took quite a lot of time, and it was very closely supervised by archaeologists that worked at the site.
What I loved about the space and what I fought really hard for was to be able to have the Hound with the white come up from below. Cersei enters at ground level and Dany enters on her dragon from above, so that you understand the way the space works very clearly. When she arrives on that dragon, I mean, that's an amazing moment in the history of the show. That needed, you know, the appropriate sort of space for that to happen.
Bernie and our location gang in Spain had found Almodovar Castle, which seemed like a perfect match for Highgarden.
This year, we've had quite a variety of amazing locations. We've had 2 different castles, one which was standing in for King's Landing at Trujillo, and then the one that was Highgarden, which was Almodovar.
We knew it before we even arrived, that this was Highgarden. We arrived at the gates of Highgarden that day.
We've been hearing about High Garden for quite a few seasons now, and you try and imagine where you'll find a place that will fulfill those expectations, and here was this really beautiful castle, literally with a garden that was high up, an amazing, amazing setting.
The morning we shot there, we came up at sunrise, and there was a mist across the fields there that was just magical. It was Tolkien-esque, it was extraordinary.
There were things to do there. A lot of our work has generally been taking away anything that's modern and build things to disguise the things that we couldn't safely remove.
From an art department point of view, there was obviously a lot of, handrails that needed to be removed. Greens did a lot of work.
Hopefully, it's largely invisible work from the construction point of view. And then the set dressing, adding in all of the chests and the gold, telling the story that way. A lot of things that went into that location.
You have the big courtyard scene where you see the Lannisters going through and looting the place. And so we had some bullion that was made here by our modelling department with the Tyrell roses on them.
Manufacturing the ingots individually was a process in itself, and then obviously getting those gold plated was quite labour intensive.
We wanted to establish a certain amount of wealth that they had, that there was obviously something that Jaime would be interested in, that the Lannisters would be removing and taking for themselves. So when you see that wagon train heading out of there, you know that they've completely cleaned the place out. The chamber where Jaime finds Olenna waiting for him, that was built in Belfast. There wasn't a room that was big enough to be shot in, that had enough sort of crew access, that allowed the camera the space that we needed there on location.
Will there be pain?
No, I made sure of that.
That's good.
My name is Sэмvelл Tarli, sworn brother of the Night's Watch, training to serve as maester at Castle Black. I knew your father. I was with him when he died. You're not dying today, Sir Jorah.
Not many things can really get hired anymore from prop stores for this show. Everything's kind of designed very bespoke, whether it be a surgical instrument or a piece of furniture.
If we need to make 12 beds, for instance, for like the infirmary in the Citadel, they'll get concepted and then they'll get made and everything gets researched. What fabrics we'll use and materials.
Within the Citadel, we also had a lot of surgical instruments to make from scratch.
Something like Sam's medical instruments, David and Dan again were very specific about what they wanted. And then it started with Jess Sinclair, and she was there doing the concept art for these instruments.
First, do quite a lot of research to look at most early forms of surgery. Looking at a lot of things from the plague was good, useful. And then also bearing in mind that Game of Thrones is often quite bloody, and David and Dan like quite gory things. So then you might up the drama to make it more so it'll fit.
It's that cross between sort of medieval, sort of, we're in that sort of medievalish world, but at the same time, we're in the Citadel, and what does that mean, and what sort of instruments would Sam use to operate on Jorah? Gavin, our props maker, he made all of those beautiful instruments that then get handed on to Kevin, and he ages them all. They then all get handed to Gordy, and then he keeps them all and is responsible for them, and he's made a lovely little pouch for them that is also part of the scene.
We wanted a look on them. I mean, they wanted to look sort of nasty and kind of, it's like, you don't want anyone coming near you with those objects.
They have to look appropriate to that period, but yet at the same time, look real and convincing, as if you could perform an operation with them.
So those all had to be designed, all had to be made in-house, purely because they didn't exist. The things you would have found wouldn't have been nearly as interesting as the things we were able to dream up.